Good morning, everybody. That's good morning in the United States. Good afternoon to my colleagues and my new friend in Europe. This is Addison Schonlein. Today is July 23rd, and today our guest is Mr. Tobias Pogorevc, who is the CEO of Helvetic in Switzerland. My colleague Richard Schumann in Holland and I are going to have a little conversation. So thank you for being with us today, Tobias.
You're welcome. Pleasure to be here.
So we're going to break this up into like two sections. I have some questions about airplanes, and Richard has some questions about airline ops. So I'm going to jump in because I have the mic.
Good.
All right. So you've put out a press release today again, touting and celebrating the performance of the Embraer E2. Have you had any issues with the GTF engine?
No, up to now we didn't have any issues. I mean, you know, when we took over the E2 last October, an issue was an AD was issued. You know, saying that we have to make inspections all 50 cycles, up to 300 cycles. And we did that with all our engines so far. And after these 300 cycles, they are released, definitely, without any restrictions. And we didn't have any findings so far. So we are quite happy with the GTF, no findings so far, and the performance, excellent.
That's great. And so far, you've taken a handful of deliveries here. What's the current status of the Embraer E2 with your airline?
At the moment, we just took, last week, we took delivery of number 5, so our 5th E2-190. And so if we would not have Corona or COVID-19 now, we would operate 5. 3 were in regular operation. And the 2 newest ones, unfortunately, we could not put them into operation so far, but we expected to do that within the next few weeks.
Okay, so the interesting thing is that you've now also opted for the larger model, the E195 E2. That seems to be a bit of a hit, actually. Can you tell us what's behind that decision and that choice?
Yeah, surely. I mean, as you know, we had a firm order of 12 E190s, E2s, and 12 options. So this was what we signed in the year 2018. So we decided to go for the E2-190. And as you know, due to the Corona crisis, we staggered the delivery of a few E2s. And this gave us the possibility to convert some. So we did some deep research of the performance of the E195, and we came to the conclusion that this model would perfectly complement the existing E190 fleet with a higher seat capacity of 134 seats. So we discussed with Embraer if this would still be possible, and they made everything to make it happen. And then we decided to convert the last 4 of the firm orders to the E195 E2.
Now, what's interesting is that these airplanes have really an amazing range compared to the E1s, if you like. And of course, the delivery record, you guys created the delivery record flying from Brazil to Zurich. That was an amazing performance. Do you plan to exploit this long range capability?
I mean, first I have to say a word to this world record flight, you know, from Brazil to Switzerland. I mean, of course, there was, we had the best conditions that you can imagine, not too strong wind passing by the Atlantic, but we still had 1.5 tons of remaining fuel when we landed in Zurich. So actually we could have gone a bit further, but unfortunately Zurich is too close to Brazil. So the record could have been expanded like this. No, what we discovered, we did, you know, within this Corona crisis, several countries needed to, we call that repatriate citizens back to Switzerland. I think in the US and in Holland, you did the same thing. So we had the operation to bring Swiss people back from Ouagadougou and Accra in Africa to Zurich. And this is when we started to calculate, to do that, and we realized, hey, it's possible to expand the range, which cannot be compared to the E1. So we did that, and we made some analysis. The performance was excellent, and what we, of course, hope, and what we discover now, there is a bunch of new destinations, smaller destinations, which could be linked to Zurich, but of course a 320 would be too big, and the E1 cannot reach these destinations. So for us as Helvetic Airways, it gives us a new market potential for this airplane.
Right, I'm sure Richard will deal with this when it comes to pop-ups, but it would seem that you have created a pop-up tool in the with the E2. Now it's interesting, in Switzerland you have, I believe it's the only market in the world where we have the A220 and the E2 operating. Essentially, in your press release today, you talk about it's the only airplane it's, you know, it doesn't really have a competitor, but I think in a way that it potentially does. Can you share any operational information, insight on how the 220 has been operating and how the E2 operates? Is there any information you can, or insight that you can give us that shows how they do?
I mean, I cannot compare it to the A220 from the former CS100 or CS300. We don't have data about this. What we focus more is, what are the savings? What are the savings in fuel, in CO2 emissions, in NOx emissions compared to the E1, or even to the Fokker, which we operated until last year? So, and these savings are tremendous. We speak about, if we have a flight range of 750 kilometers, 850 kilometers, we speak about savings per seat, fuel savings per seat of up to 30%, which is per seat, which is absolutely great. And then it's a logic behind it, that if you compare it then to an older Airbus 320, that even per seat you can compete with fuel emissions. And this is what we said. We want to stay in the regional segment. This is clear. We always operated only regional aircraft, but with this brilliant economics, in these times where the peak, the aviation is only recovering slowly, I think we will have the right aircraft for several years.
It's interesting because you are reinforcing, I guess, the message that Embraer has been saying to us for the longest time about right sizing in terms of capacity, but you now also have a tool, as you explained with the repatriation flights, that has way beyond regional potential. So
that's correct.
Even though you've been focusing on regional, you now have the ability to redefine regional, not by stage length, but by capacity.
That's correct. That's correct. I mean, everything is then linked to the maximum takeoff weight. You know, how much fuel can you put then in the aircraft, and then, of course, you have a maximum capacity, and then the range length is really, really long. The question is, does it make sense to have the whole fleet with the maximum takeoff weight? Or does it make more sense for a few aircraft which we operate only in Europe to reduce it to be even more cost efficient and fuel efficient? So these are a little bit the thoughts we had with our fleet mix.
Thank you. Richard, your witness.
My witness, yes. You mentioned already Corona crisis, of course. If I'm correct, you stopped flying in March 17 for a couple of months because of the COVID-19 crisis. Can you tell us a little bit, how has this crisis impacted Helvetic? What is, for example, your position on staff or redundancies? Did you have to make any?
Yeah, I mean, as you may know, we were in the middle of a growing path. So actually we wanted to operate 16 aircraft this summer. we wanted to have a staff level of about 550 people. When we heard about the crisis, and this was quite early, it was end of January when we had some messages from Asia, and we said, hey, we have to look at it. What could this crisis jump to Europe? Let's say it like this. And we reacted quite fast. On the one side, we made two measures, packages, let's say it like this. On the one side, we wanted to go smooth through the crisis, but on the other side, more important, we wanted to be ready for the time after the crisis. So we took immediate actions. We stopped the growing path. We stopped hiring people. We stopped not necessary investments. We were in quite close discussion with Embraer to stagger to the deliveries, maybe the first ones before the others came, to say, listen, we cannot operate 16 aircraft this summer. And then we defined with the owner a target level of 13 aircraft, fully crewed. And this is actually our basis for the future. I cannot say what will be in 2021, but then we stopped. We took some saving actions, and I think we will be ready for after the crisis, which was almost more important, because right now, what you see in Europe, everyone just speaks about this crisis now. Everyone has, we call that short work compensation from the state. You have state aid, whatever. But the question for us was always, what happens in 21, 22? If I have state aid, I'm not independent. I cannot do what I want. And then together with our owner, we made a business plan for the next few years, and we said, okay, the core level is 13 aircraft.
Yeah. You mentioned the owner, that's Swiss Martin Ebner. He's one
That's
of
correct,
the
yes.
Swiss. He doesn't publish his financial details, but can you disclose a bit, how have you fared so far? Have you operated this first half year at a loss, or how is your liquidity position?
I mean, what we did first is, and this was then a little bit, I don't know how it is in your countries. I mean, what we did when we stopped flying, we paid back the tour operators and the passengers the prepayments immediately. So our passengers didn't have to wait for the money. Our tour operators who had charter packages didn't have to wait for the money. We paid them out within 2-3 weeks. And then, of course, you get some liquidity issues because you still have the operating costs. And this liquidity bridge was granted by our owner.
Yeah. A couple of years ago, when you ordered the E2s, you said 8 of them would be on long-term leases to Swiss. You fly various routes for them. Has this changed because of COVID? Because Lufthansa Group announced earlier this year in their reorganization plan that they would end all wet lease contracts with associated airlines. Has this impacted your contracts and relationship with Swiss?
No, you must understand, we have a quite close cooperation with Swiss since the year 2006. What started with one aircraft was growing over the last few years. And I mean, the CEO of Swiss mentioned several times in public that we are a very important partner for Swiss before, while, during, and after the crisis. And it will be like this. We just announced last year the deepens of the cooperation with Swiss for 8 aircraft, 8 E2s, and this will remain. So I'm quite optimistic for that.
Yeah, that's firm. I mean, there's no revision of contracts or agreements.
No.
Okay. No. You mentioned today in the press release the Popup routes yes, that you plan to introduce in the coming days to Montenegro and Croatia. This sounds like a very niche market. Can you build a business case on such short-term agreements and plans?
Yeah, I mean, what is the idea behind the pop-up flights? I mean, our people, they could not fly for the last 3 months. There is nothing worse for a pilot or a cabin attendant to stay home. So For the motivation, this is a #1 project. We say, okay, we try something out. The world has never seen that. We try something. On the other side, we have the recency issues. The pilots, within 90 days, they need to have 3 departure starts, landings. So either they go in the simulator or we do it like this. This is one issue from the airline perspective. From the other perspective, from the passenger perspective, we realize the passengers still want to travel, but there is a huge insecurity in Switzerland and everywhere in Europe to travel still. So on the one side, you don't know what are the travel restrictions, the travel bans. On the other side, a lot of passengers are still waiting for the money for the flights they booked in May and June. So there is a complete insecurity. Nobody books at the moment for autumn or next spring. So we thought, okay, let's create something new. It's like, it comes from the retail business. Let's do a pop-up flight. We announce it short term. We cooperate with strong partners in the country, in the final destination. The passenger, they can book. And if the quarantine requirements, for example, change, they get the money back immediately. So for the passenger, there is absolutely no financial risks. And for the destination, we have a quite good cooperation with the destination where we see, okay, we will not operate the flight because we see a risk there. So, and for this, we will have the first flight on Monday to the island of Brač. No, never in a Swiss airline was flying to Brač. So this is something new as well for the Swiss leisure market. The one that we planned to do tomorrow to Montenegro, we canceled yesterday because the quarantine restrictions were increased. So all visitors from Montenegro coming back to Switzerland need to go to a quarantine for 2 weeks. So the bookings, we already paid them back. And now we see if this is a business model. I don't know if this is, it will be a long lasting. I think it can be. We didn't have a lot of partners who wanted to join us, especially from the travel tour operators. But now that this was published, we have a lot of niche players. They say, yeah, maybe you could fly, we can do this just for 2-3 days. And then let's see if it works out. I think it's a good, innovative idea. We had very good press coverage. And let's see if it will be a commercial success in the next few months. It is surely already a success for the motivation of our staff, because they say, hey, listen, something is going on. We can continue to fly. These are nice projects, and they're fully enthusiastic. And already to have this signed for the staff, this is a good experience.
And you have more destinations on your list, or how long do you plan to extend this Popup flying?
Now we have island of Brač, then we have Dubrovnik, then we have Vilnius in Latvia, and then Paris is planned. This is more for golfers. And then we have one flight in south of Italy, in Sicily. So this is what we already planned, and the flights you can already book.
Yeah. What's your view? How do you think Helvetic will emerge from the post-COVID crisis?
I think the regional market where we are in really suffered the last few months, because usually the regional airlines are not really financially stable. We are in a good position that on the one side we are financially stable. We have a good background. We operate the most modern regional aircraft, and the third is we have very motivated staff. I mean, and with this combination, I could imagine that we could offer our services not only to Lufthansa or flying out of Zurich, but as well for other airlines. This is maybe for next year. In the mid-range, in the next 2-3 years, you have to see all major airlines, they got state aid, and they will be busy in the next 5 to 7 years to pay back the state aid. They will not even have the financial capability to go for a new fleet, to go for a new environmental friendly fleet. And this is where we did our homework. And this is from next year onwards, we will have the most modern fleet in Europe, the most ecological fleet. And I think this will be a benefit for the next few years.
Is this one of the reasoning behind ordering the bigger E195 E2 now, right at this moment?
No, it was actually the last moment, because of course, if you order a plane, you have a lead time before they can finally deliver it. So actually, we would have a look at it, maybe even if it would have been fully in operation. But I think now it's the right moment. And in summer 21, as I said, we will have a fleet of 8 E2-190s or 4 E2-195. And if you look at the economical impact from the discussion to save CO2 emissions, the ticket taxes that are planned in various countries, I think we will be in a good position.
Yeah. You mentioned this topic. You see many airlines that have received state aid, like Lufthansa, Air France, KLM. They say that it's conditional, that they have to cut their domestic networks or the shorter flights. And this is, of course, a public debate very much in Europe, that flying short distances is not done anymore. Does this hinder or does this have an effect on your future, this debate on short legs?
I mean, yes, of course. On the one side, I really think train and aviation, they should complement. You know, it's clear. But not all countries have a developed train system like we have in Switzerland and what we have in Europe. So I'm sure you have some trains like from Zurich to Paris with the TGV. Maybe this will really complement then the aviation industry. But if I want to go by train to, I don't tell you now what kind of city in southern Europe, then it will always be faster to go by plane than by train. So it needs to complement, but I'm sure in the next 10, 15 years, a lot of investments will be made in the whole train system, especially for these routes within 200-300 kilometers, yes.
But it's not something that endangers your business case.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. We should not see train as a competition, but really to complement our business and vice versa.
Back to you, Addison.
Thank you. Tobias, it's just interesting as you and Richard were talking there, I was thinking about another pop-up market for you might be Reykjavik, because you can now reach it so easily. And we know that Iceland is also hurting because of no travel this summer.
Yeah,
You have a tool now that you could actually, as Richard and you were talking about, you know, the short range, the 300 kilometers, let's say up to even 500 kilometers. That isn't your niche really going forward, because you have this tool now where you can literally go halfway across the Atlantic.
That's correct.
To a place like Iceland, or you could go to somewhere in the Middle East, or you could go to somewhere all over, probably north to even as far as Central Africa if you needed. So you really redefine regional with your new fleet. Fascinating conversation. Thank you so much for talking with us.
You're welcome, Addison. Thank you very much, Richard.
Thank you.
Looking forward to speak to you again.
Thank you.